morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, as some of you eagle-eyed BTT viewers have pointed out to me, I am fast approaching my 2000th episode. But while that means I've made 2,000 episodes, it also means that some of you have watched 2,000 episodes. Yes, we've gotten to this point together. And that's one of the things I like most about Beyond the Trailer. It's not just me talking movies, it's me talking movies with you. I try to have a lot of interactive qualities to this show, including the viewer question in every single episode of Morning Movie News. And so for the 2000th episode, some of you asked, am I going to do anything special? So I thought, what better way to celebrate the 2000th episode but then to include you in the video. So what I'm asking is that sometime this week, the deadline will be end of day Sunday, this coming Sunday. I'm asking you to upload a short, quick video. You can do it on your, on your laptop or your computer with the built-in camera. You can do it on your phone. Just do a quick little video talking about why you watch Beyond the Trailer and how it makes you a savvy moviegoer. So upload that video, which again mentions why you watch Beyond the Trailer and how it makes you a savvy moviegoer, or anything you'd like to add to the conversation, anything you'd like to say about Beyond the Trailer. Upload it by the end of the week to YouTube, and I'm asking you to do that to protect me from having any viruses. Just, it's just an added layer of safety. You don't have to have it be a listed video. It can be unlisted. You can keep it, but don't put it private because I have to be able to watch it. So just mark it as unlisted, and then you can send the link to the YouTube video that you've uploaded to me at grace@gracerandolph.com. Again, that's grace@gracerandolph.com. Or you can always leave it just as a comment with the link here in the comment section on any of the Beyond the Trailer videos for the next week until the end of the day Sunday. Then I'm going to download them and we're going to put together a video which is just going to be a celebration of Beyond the Trailer and those that watch it. You'll be representing the BTT viewer. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to say, and I hope that you guys will be looking forward to participating as much as I'm looking forward to making this video. All right, so that's the announcement about the 2000th episode. Again, the deadline is the end of the day on this coming Sunday, and I will, of course, give you reminders. All right, so let's get to the first story of the day. This was a huge story, and once again we find ourselves talking about television. It seems that movies are getting so big and have such a big fandom that the studios have no choice but to turn to TV to scratch that itch. And here, of course, we're talking about the big reveal on Sunday night's season finale of Once Upon a Time that Elsa is coming to Storybrooke. I believe that's the name of the town. As many of you know, I have a big grudge against Once Upon a Time because I feel it's a ripoff of Fables. But I have to say, I didn't even like Frozen that much, as many of you know, but this has piqued my interest as well. I even watched the video clip with her reveal in it at the very end of the show. And I have to say, maybe it was just out of context, but I had a hard time even getting through that clip. But still, the way Elsa appeared looked pretty interesting, and I thought that some of you have also noted that she seems to be a villain, more of a hardcore villain. She certainly demonstrates powers that were never on display in the Frozen film. Now, there's a whole bunch of different things we could talk about here, so let's just delve into this, let's wade into this conversation one topic at a time. Now, first off, many of you are saying, why would Disney do this? Now, one of you, let's see here, I have the note here, Nardragon told me that Once Upon a Time is actually not doing that great in the ratings. It certainly has a very strong fan base, but it slipped in the last season, apparently, according to Nardragon. So Nardragon's theory is that they're bringing in Elsa from Frozen to help with the ratings. Now, that is definitely a possibility, and, why wouldn't they utilize every tool in their toolbox over at Disney? But some of you might counter, well, hey, why risk what's arguably, or might, not much of an argument, is one of the biggest commodities that Disney has developed since Walt's death, or certainly at least since the first Disney Renaissance. This is as big as The Little Mermaid, as big as Beauty and the Beast, and I think those were the two big ones. I think Aladdin, of course, and The Lion King, but I don't think those are the merchandising drivers that Frozen is. And we'll talk about merchandising actually with the viewer question today. But just right now I want to tell you that Frozen is one of the biggest merchandising properties over at Disney, which Bob Iger, the head of the company, has likened to Toy Story and Winnie the Pooh. It is, I think he said, one of their top 5 merchandising performers already. So why risk that? Well, not only do they, I'm sure, want to help the ratings of Once Upon a Time, but they don't have anything for you to digest that's from Frozen. Besides merchandise, they have no way to keep this ball rolling. They have no kindling to throw on the flame because they weren't ready for this. As we've been discussing a lot. I have a video coming out later this week also addressing this. That Disney was just trying to get a hit to try and begin a second Disney Renaissance, and they weren't sure what was going to click. I mean, Tangled was popular, but they had no reason to believe that Frozen would be so much more popular than Tangled, which I think it definitely is. Although Tangled does certainly have its very strong fan base, but it's no Frozen. So they were really caught unawares, and they have nothing in place to build on that. They want to do a live Broadway show, of course, but that's very far out. So they have to wait on that. I think it would be great to do a Frozen 2. We've discussed that as well. People are very interested in that, but that is a very far ways out. I mean, they have their slate booked through 2018, so when are you going to see a Frozen 2? More than 4 years from now? I mean, will there still be an audience at that point? So I really think that Disney is just like, what can we give audiences to, as I said, scratch that itch. I mean, you're going to see an increased presence in the theme parks for Frozen. They have the meet and greet already, but Disney is hard at work to try and make sure that they can keep this going. That's why I think they've put this in Once Upon a Time. I think that's also a factor there. Now, everybody's wondering, who is going to play Elsa? I think this is also an interesting question because I think that in this animated film, while it's not very apparent in other films, the voice cast has really been front and center. Idina Menzel, a lot of her fans, I think she was a big draw to Frozen. She has, of course, the big song. Also, how will Elsa fare without her big song, Let It Go? This will be very interesting to see the character just stand on her own 2 feet developmental-wise in terms of story. So that's an interesting question. But can someone play her besides Idina Menzel? And then also, what about Anna and Kristoff, will they show up? What about Olaf? Kristen Bell is a very big TV star, or at least a cult TV star, and she could be an excellent addition to Storybrooke. I don't know if she'd be interested in it, but considering the fact her film career is going quite well, this is a very tied in together episode of Morning Movie News. You'll see film actors moving to TV is the third topic of the day. But I think she would maybe perhaps game to take this to play Anna on Once Upon a Time, just to get her face in there. I mean, I know in Gossip Girl she was kind of frustrated that she couldn't be revealed to be Gossip Girl because she had been the voice of the character throughout the entire run of the show. So Kristen Bell, always a voice, never a face. So I think she would be interested perhaps. And also Jonathan Groff has also been on Glee. His movie career isn't really going anywhere. He might also be game to be Kristoff on Once Upon a Time. And that would be actually quite an interesting episode. I would even perhaps tune in for something like that. And I might even tune in just to see Elsa because I think it's such a big deal. So I talked about not having the song. Oh yes, and the other thing I wanted to say about this, besides Disney wanting to make sure they keep this property going, and the question as to whether or not the actors who do the voices would be in the show, but I have to say, out of all the possible outcomes, you know what I really would have liked to have seen, and I know that it would have been, it would have still been a ways out, but I wish they would have greenlit a live-action Frozen, just like they're doing Maleficent. They have Cinderella, The Jungle Book, Into the Woods, all these live-action fairy tales coming up. Why not Frozen? I think that could be very interesting, and I think that they could have some great special effects with the ice, and that's my biggest concern also as well. Perhaps it actually maybe is my biggest concern, but how are you going to handle Elsa at the television level, on network television no less? I thought the special effects were not that great that we saw in this introductory clip at the season finale for Once Upon a Time, and that they didn't look particularly good. I thought the costume looked like a costume from a meet and greet at the theme park. It did the trick. And, as I said, it made me interested to tune in. But imagine how great Elsa could look on the big screen in a live-action adaptation. I mean, her dress is supposed to be made of ice and snow, not call to mind ice and snow. So I think the whole thing's very interesting, and we've talked a lot about developing Elsa as a character and whether or not Disney would be willing to go there, considering the fact that since she's such a blank, audiences have filled in the blanks their own. They've drawn the character to their own liking, which is always dangerous to play with that afterwards. So what do you want? What's bigger for you? More Elsa now or Elsa done right? And maybe this is done right to you. So that's the first story of the day. And I think the huge reaction from the fan base just proves that I think overall this was a smart move by Disney. All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day, a lot of you talked about it, is today the Batmobile is apparently going to be revealed. Zack Snyder tweeted a photo out and he said, okay, everybody, tomorrow, am I going to pull off this tarp tomorrow? The tarp was like already half off and we could really see the Batmobile. It looked very Tim Burton. It looked very reminiscent of Tim Burton's Batmobile, which I thought was an interesting choice. But I'll get to that in a moment. The other thing, though, is that we have another tease for Superman versus Batman. And you have to ask yourself, how many teases are they going to be able to draw out over the course of 2 years? Well, maybe a year and a half by the time the trailer comes out. I guess eventually, there'll be set leaks. Perhaps, at this rate, Warner Brothers and DC will be encouraging set leaks. Perhaps they'll be doing them themselves. And I think you're seeing Warner Brothers try to stay part of the conversation despite having pushed their film back so far. So I think that you're seeing kind of the drawbacks of pushing the release date of Superman versus Batman to 2016, and that they are out of the loop. They aren't part of the conversation. And I think that these kind of marketing gimmicks, I think, seem a little bit beneath this production. You'd like to think that Superman versus Batman would be the crown jewel of DC's cinematic universe. It's supposed to be. And I think that, I think they should be a little bit more secretive about their leaks. I think Star Wars is handling their publicity quite well, with the black and white still of the cast sitting down for the reading, and the great photo of R2-D2 and the producers looking at it in like the prop shop or whatever, and J.J. Abrams being there. Also the video that J.J. Abrams made with Lawrence Kasdan I thought was really interesting, just kind of like talking about, it seemed very like you were in the heart of the beast, you were finding out what was going on. And also Bob Iger, I think quite endearingly, took a selfie with Chewbacca when he was visiting the production. So I think that's a better way to do it, that you're documenting history and awareness of that. Whereas I feel that this Warner Brothers DC, promotion for Superman versus Batman feels, as I said again, very gimmicky, very, hey, look over here, very center ring of a circus, or actually they're not the center ring, and that's the whole problem. They're trying to hey, look over here, everybody, I've got a Batmobile with a tarp on it. All right, so expect lots more leaks like this, and they're going to have really just a drawn-out process. And I mean, I almost wish they would just go dark, and then just really patiently wait to really just pounce and be fresh and new. Instead of, do they really want to be a movie people have been talking about for 2 years? There's two ways to go with this. A movie that's been anticipated for 2 years, or a movie that, you've already heard a lot about. You've practically seen it. All right, so that's the first aspect of the story. The second is the obvious change of the Batmobile. It looks very Tim Burton. It also looks reminiscent of a lot of the video games and comic books. I mean, this is certainly a very well entrenched and established Batmobile. But I have to say, I know some of you, I don't know, also, some of you, by the way, are saying you don't like the Nolan trilogy. Where have you been? The Nolan trilogy has been a huge box office performer and revitalized and forever changed the comic book movie genre. But yet suddenly a bunch of people are like, you know what? Never really liked it. Nolan's like, whatever, I'm glad I left. I'm just really surprised that so many people, especially when The Dark Knight Rises came out, and God forbid people like me, were to critique it, there was a huge, wall of, fan, nope, you can't say anything bad about The Dark Knight Rises. But suddenly, a ton of people are like, you know what, never really liked it. That was just pretend, because it's all I had. I don't know if maybe that change in attitude is to try and support this new era with Snyder and Goyer at the helm, but I don't know. It just seems very odd to me. And I think that we should throw Nolan's trilogy under the bus, because don't forget, The Dark Knight was spectacular, and I think still one of the, not only the best comic book movies ever made, but one of the best movies ever made in general. Now, one of the best aspects of it that I thought really was indicative of Nolan's Batman was his version of the Batmobile, aka the Tumbler. That was a fantastic design. I think it moved Batman into a very modern era. It looked phenomenal. It really played up the fact that these were military designs. He was utilizing Wayne technology, and Lucius Fox was not like a Broadway or a Fifth Avenue fashion window designer, but he was a military grade designer, and that's the products that he gave Batman a military, just not the Joker would say, where does he get these wonderful toys, but the U.S. Army would say, where does he get these wonderful toys? I thought the Tumbler, that's how much I liked it. I thought it was really a phenomenal, contribution to the Batman mythos. And let's not forget the Bat Pod. One of the best, there are so many great sequences in The Dark Knight, but one of the greatest sequences was that car chase where he ejected from the damaged Batmobile, and we could see what that Bat Pod could do. That was amazing. That was also a really well designed thing. The way it could flip around and turn around, do a 180, the way it was engineered. It really was. It was a level of toy that wasn't just a Batarang or his utility belt. Batman's toys extended beyond that. And they were something that I think could keep up with today's technology, where we all have a lot of great toys. And Batman should always be a few steps ahead. So I'm really disappointed with the choice to get rid of that. I don't know if it's contractual, but I feel that to take Batman back into a more theatrical depiction it is a little worrisome to me. We'll see. Again, I am on the side of Ben Affleck. I'm one of those people, interestingly, I didn't totally think that Anne Hathaway could do it, but she did a great job. This isn't like I have faith, I trust in Nolan, in Nolan I trust, the great saying. I don't trust in Zack Snyder. I don't trust in David Goyer, but I do trust in Ben Affleck. At this point, I think he's earned it, or at least he's earned the chance to prove that he has fully moved to a new level. And as I said, if you see Runner, I think you can definitely see shades of his Batman / Bruce Wayne. I think he's going to do it, but I wish he had a better car to get into. All right, so that's the second story of the day. And if they really do reveal the Batmobile and there's anything different about it that you couldn't have seen from that first photo, we'll discuss it again tomorrow. All right, so the third story of the day, as I said, I talked about with Kristen Bell, actors who have tried to make the jump to film or have not succeeded in film just in general, going to television. There's so much spillover in movies, and also there's spillover but also less opportunities because they just aren't making as many movies as they used to, and the mid-range movie has pretty much disappeared. So not only do you see a lot of opportunity in television, but you see gigs in television. It's someplace to go. So there's quality and there's work there. So anyway, I said Gotham, the Gotham show on Fox. We talk about so much TV these days. It's crazy how, movies are, which one's winning. For a while we speculated that TV would be the one that beat out movies and stole its audience, but it's starting to look like movies are taking over television as subsidiary programming to support their films, which I think is fascinating. But we talked about how Gotham was teasing the Joker. And I was like, one of the things I said about it was like, it would be very difficult to cast that role. Now, one of you suggested Michael Pitt from the U.S. version of Funny Games, the U.S. remake. It was the same foreign director, Michael Haneke, I believe. And so Michael Pitt starred in that. But he was also Jimmy on Boardwalk Empire. Phenomenal part of that show, and I think the show never quite recovered from when he left. Now, rumor is he had to leave because he was difficult on set, but he's found salvation on another television show. Apparently he's on Hannibal right now. I don't watch Hannibal, but in terms of the reaction to Mads Mikkelsen in the Salvation trailer, and all of you being like, it's Mads Mikkelsen from Hannibal. Apparently there are Hannibal viewers out there. So I'm curious, how's Michael Pitt doing on that show? But I think Michael Pitt would actually be an excellent choice for the Joker. He's just Heath Ledger-y enough to play into that mythos, but I think he is also quirky enough and artistic enough as an actor to make the role his own. So I think he'd be a great choice. But it got me thinking about actors who are finding their second wind on television. And the reason this is timely, not only because of your suggestion, this suggestion about from Ryan LGN about Michael Pitt, but also there was a great article in New York Magazine, I'll put the link in the video description, to Josh Hartnett talking about why he disappeared from Hollywood, why movies haven't worked out for him, and why he's come back for Penny Dreadful on Showtime. And that was a really fascinating article. It talked a lot about trying to define oneself in Hollywood, how the Hollywood machine, if you're either with it or against it, and how it can chew you up and spit you out, because it's done with you. And so I think you can see from the article some mistakes were Josh Hartnett, some were Hollywood's, and some were just that's the way sometimes the cards go out. So that was an interesting article. So I wanted to ask you guys, what actors would you like to see get a second chance on television? What film actors, specifically film actors? Who is somebody who has really, tried to make the jump to film and failed, or has had a somewhat successful film career, but you don't see anymore? Who do you want to see go back on television? For instance, Billy Bob Thornton, I think, is really doing a fantastic job on FX's Fargo. And of course, he got his start in indie film with Sling Blade. He was a really big deal for a while. Jerry Bruckheimer was hiring him for Armageddon. Bad Santa, he was doing all this stuff. But then he just wasn't able to bring in the audience eventually, and he just faded away. But now he's back in a very big way, which could parlay back into some film work. So I'm just curious, what actors do you miss, and do you think that TV should have on their radar? All right, so that's the third story of the day. Now let's get on to a viewer question. This is from Elias Royal. And Elias, I guess. I'm sorry, Elias, if I mispronounced your name. All right, so you're in good company, though, with good old Rafe Fiennes. Okay. You have to spell your name like it sounds. This is, or hand out pamphlets with the phonetic pronunciation. But anyway, phonetic. So Elias says, "Hi Grace, big fan. I have a question regarding the news for Star Trek and its new director. I covered this. Roberto Orci might be at the helm. He is the previous writer with Alex Kurtzman, and they are a loved-hated. It's a love-hate relationship with audiences in this duo's work. They're splitting up, and Orci might be taking over the Star Trek franchise as his first directing gig." I think Alex Kurtzman did People Like Us, the Chris Pine film that nobody saw. All right, so I hope Orchie does a little better. So Elias says, besides the box office numbers and critics' reviews, how do studios really gauge audience reaction to a film? In addition, does the way the studios perceive the audience's reaction inform decisions about the behind-the-scenes talent for sequels or prequels? Thanks, smiley face. Thank you for your question, Elias. I think it's a great question and very timely. Now, you mentioned picking actors and such, and that's a very different discussion. So just for today, the sake of today, and for interest of time, so this isn't an hour-long morning movie news, I'm going to address just how a studio decides to make a sequel. Now, obviously, as you said, well, first, let's do, I have my notes in order of importance, but let's first talk about the one that doesn't really weigh in, and that's critical reviews. Critics' reviews only really have to do with, that's in the awards circuit, when you're trying to make movies they get for the Oscar race, when you need those good reviews to plaster quotes on your for your consideration campaign. That's why reviews are very important there. But reviews, if a movie doesn't do well in any of the other areas I'm about to mention, good reviews aren't going to get it a sequel. There has to be one of these other elements. So in this case, for deciding on sequels, when you're in this arena of, you know, blockbusters and big budgets, etc., or building budgets, critical reviews are not a factor. All right, but you did say box office. Now that's the number one factor. If a movie does phenomenal box office, you can bet Hollywood is going to find a way to make a sequel. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but someday. Just for instance, look how long it's taken for the Alice in Wonderland sequel to come about. They had to find a whole new creative team behind the camera for it, but they're still making it. Disney has not forgotten. You don't forget one of the first films to cross the $1 billion mark and to join the $1 billion club. So box office is by far and away the biggest indicator of should there be a sequel. For instance, that flies directly in the face of reviews. Look at the Transformers films. Everybody has the worst things to say about those movies, but they keep going to see them, and they make so much money that Paramount continues to make them, as they should. They're just like printing money. Even if you hate it, you are still, you know, pushing the lever to make more money for Paramount. All right, so box office, the most important. Then also, there's on-demand streaming, etc. Used to be called DVD sales and rentals, or VHS. For instance, Austin Powers, not a big box office performer in theaters, but the thing performed so well and consistently for such a long period of time in the ancillary market, that's what that's called, they decided, New Line, decided to make another one, which of course was a huge hit because the audience had grown exponentially, after Austin Powers had left theaters. So if a studio sees numbers that are doing very well, that people are discovering the movie after its theatrical run, they're like, well, there's clearly an audience that's being built here, let's tap into that. So far we have box office and also the ancillary market, ratings-wise, also when they're playing on cable, if a lot of people are tuning in. For instance, Mrs. Doubtfire is consistently, apparently, one of the most watched movies or rented movies out there. And that's why they've decided to make a sequel so many years later. The movie's still playing, and they're still interested in it, so the audience hasn't gone away. So there you see the decision to make a sequel. All right, so the third thing is, as I mentioned with Frozen, merchandising. Maybe it doesn't make a ton of money at the box office, maybe it doesn't get a lot of good reviews, doesn't get a lot of respect, but it's such a big performer with toys and other merchandise that it's worth continuing the franchise. It's driving the merchandise. The movies at that point are just really a tool, an excuse to come out with new product. Now, a perfect example of that is Pixar's Cars franchise, and of course, Planes. I thought the first Planes was hard to sit through. It was actually, and I'm pretty forgiving. Look, I'm very open-minded. I like Legends of Oz. Dorothy's Return, I thought there was a lot of good there, even though technologically, the animation was lacking. But I thought that Planes was just really a difficult movie to even get through. But look, they have a sequel coming out because people bought the toys. Kids love the Planes toys. Kids love Cars. That's why the Cars sequel was made as well, Cars 2. And a lot of people are wondering, how could Pixar do this? How could they sink so low? And the answer is that I believe Cars is actually, with Toy Story, probably one of their biggest merchandising licenses. So that's a third thing. So we have box office, ancillary market, and merchandise. And then the fourth thing is buzz. If people really talk about a movie a lot and it has intense media coverage, even if it didn't do phenomenally well, If Hollywood can see that maybe they had a missed opportunity and people really wanted to see that, for instance, even though the second Smurfs didn't do so well, they're making another Smurfs, based on the box office of the first, but because there is a big audience for that. People want to see it succeed. Look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's been a very successful animated television show, but the movies have never done particularly well. But yet here they are making another one because people talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles so much. And you can also factor in the merchandising possibilities, and probably how maybe it's doing on demand. I'm not sure about those numbers, but at least you have buzz and merchandising for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So it's, those are the 4 factors I think that a studio looks at when they're deciding on a sequel. So I'm curious, do you think this recipe works, guys? Do you feel that maybe the movie studios are missing out on certain sequels that should be made? And what do you think of the fact that critics, their reviews don't factor in here? Quality isn't on the list. I think that's fascinating. But, again, at the end of the day, Hollywood is a business. And while, fine art only has to please one person who buys it at an obscene price, millions of dollars, to be considered a success, or has to please one, museum director, although the art world is becoming more commercial by the day as well. But movies are mass appeal. You have to get a large number of people to enjoy them and be willing to, buy a ticket or buy the DVD or stream it, etc. So, it's hard to, quality is harder to grapple with when you have to please so many people. You have to really rely on other factors because beauty is in the eye of the moviegoer. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in. That's today's morning movie news. Still working on an angle for this office. I might have to get a table so you can see more of the room. I'm not quite sure, but thank you for bearing with me on this transition. And don't forget to make those videos for the 2000th episode. So write down below what you think of today's 3 top stories, the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.